Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you all about the latest from Havok 5, out May 1st on Century Media Records. This album has 11 tracks, 45 minutes in length, and this is the band's 5th full-length studio album. It's been 3 years since they released Conformicide, and the boys from Denver are back, and they're back with a vengeance. They're back with an absolute banger. I would go as far as to say that this is their best album to date. If Metallica was to release today Injustice for All, I think this album would be Metallica's Injustice for All with bass. Now, let me start off by talking a little bit about the structure. I'll get into the elements of the album, and then I'll try to back up these big statements that I started off this review with. So I want to start off by talking a little bit about the structure of the album. I really enjoy the opening of the record. It starts off almost coming out of nowhere, out of nothing. The music starts to build up, the volume starts to increase, and this is how the album gets started. I love that opening, really throwback, perhaps a little bit of a nod to Injustice for All, but I really like this starting of the record. It adds a sense of build-up, and it really represents well what the album is going to offer from that point on. It's an album that, in my opinion, has a structure that really doesn't have any dips whatsoever. It actually feels like it gains momentum, it gains speed, it gains heaviness as the album progresses all the way through. Normally, you would expect an album like this to have a very robust start and then a little bit of a dip in the middle with perhaps a ballad or at least a couple more soft, melancholic tracks, not as high-tempo, energetic songs, and then start to get a lot of that momentum back again with the last third of the record. At least, that was kind of my expectation going into this album. That's not the structure that you're going to get here. You're going to get an album that builds up on that first track, builds up really slowly, but once it gets going, it just keeps gaining momentum. It feels like it gets heavier with every song. It feels like it gets faster and more robust and more penetrating with every single track from that point on, with the only exception being the closing track, Don't Do It. This is an 8-minute masterpiece of a song. I love that this is the closing track. I love the fact that they didn't fit this song in the middle of the record. I think a lot of other bands would perhaps throw this one in the middle because it's a song that really would break the album into two. And if you're looking at a vinyl, you would put this at the end of the first side of the vinyl and allow the second half of the vinyl to be really strong, really fast moving. At least in a traditional sense, that's what the expectations would be. Putting this as the last track on the album to me is pure genius. It allows the album to have this robust feel all the way through, feel like it's gaining momentum all the way through, and then once this song hits you at the end, it really comes down. It becomes a lot more melancholic, but there's still a few surprises left in that track that allow the album to finish as strong as it started. Almost the reverse polar opposite of the first song that builds up into something. This one has that same sense of building up into something, but it builds up into something that closes off the album. I love the structure of this record, and I love the track listing behind it. Really allows the album to be strong all the way through. Now, some of the elements on this record that deserve some attention are, for example, the bass. I really feel like I have to talk about the bass first before I talk about guitars and vocals and drums. The bass deserves some massive kudos on this record. This album to me has a ton of bass really coming through. It's really noticeable. They didn't hide it on any single song whatsoever. Really strong presence, if you will, and I love that about the record. It adds grooviness to the sound, it adds presence to the sound, it adds heaviness to the sound, and in my opinion, it even adds a little bit of darkness to some of the tracks. I love the fact that there's tons of bass, tons of great bass lines throughout the album, and it's never hidden in any given point in time on any given track. And some tracks is really noticeable, on par with the guitars and drums as far as having a predominant role in how the song sounds and how the song feels. The drums on this album add a lot of heaviness to the overall sound of the album. They're not dominating, they're not one of those dominating elements of the record that overshadows everything else around it, but they definitely play a huge role in the heaviness of the record, but also in the driving force behind the album. The drums and the guitars, parallel to each other, are really the two drivers of the record, really dictating the tempos, how strong the songs are, how heavy they are, how much movement the tracks have. Everything surrounding the dynamics of the record really come, in my opinion, from the drums and guitar collaboration on how those two elements coexist throughout the record. The guitars, what is there to say about the guitars? Great guitar work, really dynamic, they're really melodic, heavy, penetrating, powerful. Even the use of acoustic guitars throughout the album. There's a couple of tracks on the album that they throw some acoustic guitars. I really feel like that added, it was an added value to the overall sound and dynamics of the record. Really great texture, really great sound. It just allows the songs to go in different directions. It allows the songs to have different emotions, different atmosphere, if you will. So I really like the overall sound of the guitars. It's really polished, it's really clean, really crisp. And they did a magnificent job with the riffs, with the style, how fast they wanted the songs to go, how they wanted that sound, that guitar riff sound to be. Everything surrounding the guitars on this album is phenomenal, and specifically with the solos. I love the solos on this record. There's not one solo that's like a throw-in solo that, you know, the song could have lived without, or whatever else you want to call it. Absolutely magnificent solos throughout the record. I really like what they did with the solos, choosing the right style, the right approach, in the right place in the songs where the solo needed to go in order to give something to the track. This is an album that doesn't have solos just for the sake of having solos. It has solos because they add something to the song, either to the atmosphere of the song, to the message of the song, to the melody of the song, to the heaviness of the song. Whatever the case is, the solos always feel like an added value to the tracks, and they always feel like they bring something different and something unique to the table with every single track. David Sanchez on vocals, he brings this album to life, giving irreverence to the sound and to the lyrics with his vocal approach, and I like the vocal approach overall on the record. I love his style, I love his approach. It really has this graspiness to it. It just brings a little bit of dirt to how clean everything else sounds, how polished everything else sounds. His vocals bring a little bit of roughness to the overall sound, taking a little bit of that shine away from everything else. And I love some of the changes they did, going in with some more clean style vocals in some songs, really adding a melancholic effect to the tracks. But overall, magnificent job on the vocals, really igniting the songs on this record. This, in my opinion, is going to go down as one of those thrash metal classics of this new era of thrash metal. Absolutely magnificent record all around. There's nothing to say about this record that is not positive. These guys did a magnificent job, from structure to track listing, how they picked the right songs for the right spot in order to emphasize that feeling of growth that the album has. The closing track, Don't Do It, magnificent song, as close as you'll get to a thrash ballad by Havok. I really love everything. The vocals, the guitars, the bass, like I said before. This album has so much bass, it's just absolutely incredible. Sometimes even not overshadowing, but parallel to the guitars in terms of predominance within certain tracks. So this, to me, is going to go down as one of those classic thrash metal albums, of at least of this generation, of this era of thrash metal. I have no doubts. Best Havok album to date, in my opinion. The more mature sound, the more robust sound, the album that has a little bit more direction. I just felt that this album knew what it wanted. They knew where they started, they knew where they wanted to go, and they knew exactly how to get there. I just got that feeling listening to it. I'm a big fan of Havok, and this album to me just surpassed all my expectations, even beyond the expectations set forward by the singles that they released. I feel like there's better tracks on this album than the singles. That tells you how strong overall this record really is. As far as songs are concerned, I want to start off with Betrayed by Technology. That stop and going at the beginning of this track is absolutely wicked. If you're listening to this song on a stereo, you'll still get the feeling of the sound coming out of the left and the right speaker. But I suggest you listen to this on headphones. It will blow your mind. You really feel the sense of the sound coming from the left to the right, left, right. I just absolutely love that opening. I love that stop and go feel. I love how they not only created that opening, but then having one come out of each side of the speakers, to me, is brilliant. It adds value to the sound. It adds a different experience to the overall song. Great riff in the verses, really pushing the song forward. It slows down in tempo, and the drums pick up heaviness in the chorus. It's a song that really has two distinct styles and approaches, one in the verses, one in the chorus. Great bass line following the second chorus, another song that has just a predominant bass line. And this song, you don't hear it as much throughout the track, but you do get this really great bridge, if you will, bass bridge, if you will, that then leads into the solo. The solo is very melodic, very powerful, really pulling the energy, not necessarily the melody, but the energy that the song has, and allowing it to get exploded or magnified in the guitar solo. The song then returns to original formula of verses and chorus, finishing off with a chorus. Great track, really dynamic, really well constructed. Next, Merchants of Death. This to me is a song that immediately, the moment I listened to the album, I was glued into this song. It has a little bit of a punk structure, but it plays out as a thrash speed track. It really has a feeling of those two worlds, speed metal and thrash metal, coming together, but overall there's still some sprinkles of punk in there. At least in my perspective, I felt, if not for anything from the structure of the song itself. Really dynamic track. It moves all over the place. Great energy, great guitar riff, thunderous drums. The drums are so powerful in this song, and the bass. Talk about a bass line. The bass is predominant throughout the whole track. As much as you hear from the guitars and drums, as much as you're going to hear from the bass. It's really in your face all the way through with this song. The vocals, in my opinion, really bring a raw atmosphere of power to the overall sound that the song has. The solos is really interesting. The solo slows down the song. This is a song that's very fast, has a great tempo to it, very irreverent in the way it sounds, in the way it's structured, in the way it's built. And then you almost expect the solo to come in and just absolutely go over the top and almost destroy everything in its path. No, the solo slows down the track completely. It goes 180. It goes completely different from the song. It changes everything around, slows everything down, and it adds darkness to the song. And another element of the solo is that they kept that bass line underneath the solo. So you got the solo on top, really taking full front stage, if you will. And then you have underneath it, there's a layer underneath it where you can still hear the bass line going behind it. I love that. It just added so much life, and it really added a sense of darkness to that specific portion of the song. A song that's built with light and speed, that part really slows down and gets very dark. I really like that aspect. It's a blistering track all around. Once that piece is over, once the solo is over, it goes back into the original formula. It gets really fast, high tempo, a lot of energy. I just love this song. It's just blistering track all around, with the exception of the solo that adds a little bit of darkness to this track. Next, I have to talk about this song. I mean, I already talked about this song, and I have to give you some more details about Don't Do It, the closing track on the album. 8-minute epic masterpiece, in my opinion. This song is as close as you'll get to a thrash ballad by Havok, in my opinion. It has a little bit of those condiments, it has a little bit of an old school structure. It starts off acoustic with an acoustic portion of the song, then it builds into this more heavy but very melancholic dark track, really somber, menacing atmosphere to it. Even the way the vocals come into it really feels like something out of a horror movie, or at least a thriller. It has a very dark, ominous vibe to it, the way it sounds, how slow it is. The heaviness comes in and out during that portion of the song, really weaving its way in. I just like the whole atmosphere the song has. It's just very dark, heavy at times, but predominantly just really dark in its sound and the atmosphere that it brings to the forefront. Then in the last third of the song, there's this outburst of energy. It gets fast, it gets heavy, it becomes almost DNA Havok in its full potential and its full display. It just becomes really aggressive, really intensive, and that's pretty much the ending of the track. It's the trademark of the overall sound of the album. But I like the dynamic of this song. I love the fact that it starts more dark, more melancholic, with heaviness coming in and out of the track. It's very reminiscent of old school ballads or old school thrash metal tracks that had that more ominous build up to it, and then it had like this really fast, really robust end to the song that was almost 180 from the whole feeling of the song, from the whole sound of the song. This to me is an old school track that it has the perfect ending, because it ends in a very robust way that kind of reminds you of how dynamic the whole album is all the way through. I just love the sound of this track, and I love what it does. And then as it closes, it loses a little bit of that intensity, goes back into the acoustic. So it finished, the song goes full circle. It finishes how it started with that acoustic melody. I was hoping that acoustic melody would kind of bridge into the opening track. It doesn't do that, but I still like the fact that it starts off acoustic, finishes off acoustic, and then the opening song on the album, if you're going in loop, if you're listening to the album in loop, it starts off coming from nowhere, coming from nothing into something. It doesn't fully tie into the last track, but there is some, you know, for me, I want to stretch it, and I want to say that there's a little bit of a tie-in, at least in terms of atmosphere and feel. Alright guys, this is it. This is Havok with 5, out May 1st on Century Media Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.